Hi everybody and welcome to Freebird. First things first, let me address the fact that I have been missing on the podcast for a few months, right? Since December, I think. And the reason for that is really nothing. I just wanted to take some time off to reassess what the year was like in 2020. I wanted to build on a few things that were priority for me. I wanted to take on a few projects, and I just found kind of torn. I just found myself kind of torn between doing everything. So I don't want to apologize for anything, and this is not an apology. This is just me saying, I'm here, I'm back, and let's talk. So, in today's podcast, I wanted to touch upon the subject matter of failures and mistakes. So, I'm calling this podcast The Importance of Making Mistakes. Now, let's kind of take a little bit of a revisit on this subject and look at mistakes in general. How do we define mistakes? For me, mistakes are blunders. Mistakes are when things don't go the way I plan them to, right? And I think for every person out there that's listening to this, you have definitely found yourself at a point in time in life where no matter what you're doing, things are probably going in the other direction, right? So this podcast is for you if you are in a place like that. And let's talk about why actually making mistakes and having those failures and having that experience is so important to our own personal stories. So the first thing, I've taken some notes. You guys know me. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was this lovely line that Thich Nhat Hanh has, and it's part of his book as well. He's written a book about it, and it's called No Mud, No Lotus. If you haven't read it already, I highly recommend it. In this book, he speaks about the fact that even in nature, right, when we look at nature and we look at how the world is built around us, the most beautiful things actually come from hardship, or what we would technically call unpretty. And I think there is a very big lesson there, even within nature, that every growth spurt, even in nature, involves some kind of muddy water, some kind of fragility, right? And beautiful things can happen from that. If we go a little bit back into our own personal histories and remember when we were children, right? And I'm talking about times when you were like 1 year old or 2 year old. And if you look at that time in your life, we were learning to walk, right? So we would stumble and we would fall and we would crawl a little, and our mothers and fathers would get all worried about us and pick us up, etc. If we hadn't tried at that point, and if we said, sort this, I'm not going to try walking, just doesn't work for me. So we wouldn't be walking human beings right now, right? So it's interesting when we reflect back on our life as early as our childhood, there are enough lessons there to tell us, to guide us on this. The other thing that I wanted to share today was scientifically what happens when we fail and we make mistakes. Now, I know that a lot of what I'm saying right now or saying this far is feel good and may feel fluffy. So I was having a conversation with Neil the other day, and we were listening to this podcast called the Huberman podcast. This guy is a dude. He talks about neuroscience. He's the head of department in Stanford, I think. And it's just incredible the kind of research that he's putting into neuropsychology and neuroscience. And what he says is this, that scientifically, the failure, the frustrations, the struggle, all of that is absolutely essential in the path for growth. What happens is, and as most of you guys know, our brain is full of neural pathways. You can imagine this as synapses, right? So this is a neural pathway, and these are synapses where the electricity keeps going, and this pathway is being reinforced again and again and again. And that's how you learn. That's how you kind of get better at things. That's the 10,000 hour rule, right? As we grow up and as we become adults, a lot of us forget that that essential frustration and going through that process is essential to growth. So he talks a lot about the neuroscience of things and how it is absolutely essential that we feel that frustration, that we grow through that frustration, because on the other side there is a better behavior that works for us as human beings. I found that super interesting. I think the challenge that a lot of us face is how do we go about doing it without getting absolutely frustrated, right? I mean, let's face it, it doesn't feel nice to constantly have hardships. And what can we do about it? So, one of the resources that is out there, which I would definitely recommend to all of you, is an organization called Thrive, THRIVE, Thrive Global, and they talk about micro steps. That if you're doing something that is exceptionally hard and you are failing at it and you're making a lot of mistakes, just take small steps. Just take small steps and guide yourself through the process, because moving is better than not moving at all, even if you're stumbling and falling. And like we just heard from Huberman, it is essential for growth. Um, the other thing that I wanted to talk about today was how you can look after yourself during that process. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do. So whenever I find myself dealing with something difficult, I try to begin with setting an intention. Now, I know that it's a lot of spiritual psychology, pop psychology, and a lot of us, think of intention as some bit of woo woo and all of that. But actually, here's the thing. When you set an intention, you're kind of telling yourself, what is it that I want to achieve through this? It's like a goal, but it's not so hard. It's like a goal, but it's a little more fluid and feeling. It's like saying before a meeting, for example, my intention is to make sure that this person I work with gets, understands what I have to offer. It can sound like my intention during this difficult conversation is to be as compassionate as I can be, etc. It just takes the blow away, it takes the hardness away from something. The second and the most important thing I feel in all of this is to understand what your motivations are. Now, that requires a fair degree of inner work, I think. So, what does that look like? What am I talking about? Today, when I woke up this morning, I didn't really know I was going to record this podcast. I've been thinking about it, I've been sitting on it for so long. And when I woke up this morning, I thought, let me just do it. Because I know, I've understood myself enough now to know that my motivation comes from being able to communicate or being able to express myself. And we're so blessed to live in a time where there's technology and everything is so available in terms of resources that we can actually head out and do that. We can take ownership and control over that which we can control. So it's worthwhile to do a bit of inner work to understand what is it that motivates you? Who are you as a person? And where do your passions lie? Where do your drivers lie? And it's okay if it is, for example, something like seeking validation. It's all right. You work with that till you're stronger and you're good. You feel strong enough to be enough for yourself. But that's a conversation for another day, right? So I wrote that, it's important to know who you are, your essence, and stay true to yourself, right? And everyone every single one of us, and one of you listening to this out there, everyone has inner strength. This is not the luxury or the talent or the gift of only the Oprahs of the world, or only the Buddhists of the world, or only the great leaders of the world. No, every single human being has that within them. And I know that this probably doesn't sound very comforting if you find yourself struggling right now. And which is why I wanted to do this podcast today, to help you understand that this struggle will get you somewhere better, as long as you're using it for something that's a little more positive, a little more forward looking, a little more empowering. And I know this from personal experience that when I had my burnout about 3 years back, and it was so bad, my concentration was completely shot. And I couldn't, from reading several books in a week to reading pages in a week, I couldn't even read half a page. It would hurt me physically in my brain. And I remember at that time, one of the decisions I made, and I'm so grateful to the higher powers that be, that thought came to me. One of the decisions I made was, you know what, if I can't write a lot, but I know that I like expressing myself, I know that I like getting my power back, maybe I should do a children's book. Now, it's a whole separate matter that the children's book took actually a lot more effort, but that was a blessing in itself as well. So find that little step, find that little micro step, find that conversation, find that whatever it is to help you bridge that. Because that step, that decision, that intention, and putting your motivation where it should be is going to take you so far, I assure you. It's going to be life changing. And you will know then, looking back, that all those mistakes were actually playing out to something that was meant for you. So, not only does this work on a neuroscience brain chemistry level, it definitely works in a life journey level as well. And one of the things Neil shared recently on his LinkedIn was the story about this captain called Shackleton. And look it up. It's basically a guy who wanted to do this transatlantic kind of journey across the seas. And this was way back in the time where definitely, a lot of people weren't doing that. It took a lot of courage, the deal. And so the way he recruited his team was that he put out an ad, okay? And the ad read something like this. He said, it basically said that there are definitely going to be hardships. We might fail. We might never come back from this journey, right? But if you want to be a part of an adventure, right? And if you have the passion for that, then come, because this is where we're going. So he recruited like-minded, soulful people into that project, and they were a success. But that's not the point. The point is that he recruited the right kind of people. So the message here really is, recruit yourself into the right things. Think about what is it that you can learn from this mistake or this hardship or this experience, and then just work in that direction every day, a little bit, step by step. And you will find, for those people who've actually, if you look at role models, right, you will find that every triathlete, every marathon runner, every big artist, they've led lonely lives. They've faced rejection, they've faced failures, their knees have hurt, their ankles have bruised, they've been in pain, and it is all part of the process. So right from the lotus growing in the mud to physical feats, to endeavors of physical, nature and feats that people accomplish, pain is essentially part of that process. Mistakes and suffering are part of that process, and we need to embrace them a lot more. Perhaps the answer lies in treating all of life like an adventure, And sometimes there could be hard days, and sometimes there could be days where, like, oh my God, what's happening? And nothing is going according to the plan that I set out for myself. When we were in B school, business school, or whatever college you went to, you would, especially as an Indian, they would ask you, Beta, what do you want to be when you grow up? And how do you want your life to look like? I think the broad strokes are there as to what you want to achieve, but this is a time also for reinventing yourself. So let's not be afraid of the mistakes we make. Let's not be afraid and fearful of crashing and falling. Let's perhaps use this time to see what Shackleton and the people on the ship saw. That life is essentially an adventure, and perhaps by just changing our neural pathways and asking them to fire in a different direction, we can build something that will be a real life skill for the future. I hope you liked this episode of Freebird. I want to hear everything you have to say. And thank you for staying here and watching me speak. With that, namaste. Bye-bye.